Trust Barometer, and thank you for coming so early in the morning. The one thing I'd say about the Trust Barometer as you go through it, some of you are very familiar faces and you know it well and you know how it's presented, but you're going to see a lot of charts and a lot of data, and really it's the interpretation that goes behind that information that is probably the most important contribution you get out of it, and the contribution of our panel, who I would like to thank very much for coming along to support us as well. So I'm going to present the main statistical findings of the Trust Barometer, and then we will also look at what are the implications of the finding of the Trust Barometer and what is the roadmap to trust, if you like, and Jerry will cover that part of the presentation. Just to tell you about it, the Trust Barometer looks at 4 key institutions because we believe they are pillars of the society which we all live in. That is government, business, media and sources of information, non-government governmental organisations. We look, as I said, at the benefits of trust, and then there will be a panel discussion and questions and answers. And if last year's anything to go by, the question and answers is almost a cathartic exercise for us all. So just to tell you about the barometer at a glance, this is the largest global study of trust that exists. We've been doing this for nearly 11 years now, and we have a data bank of trend information about trust in 23 countries. In fact, it's 24 this year. Norway has just been added to the survey. All of that information is launched over the period of 1 week in 23 different countries. It started the day before yesterday at the World Economic Forum in Davos, where this is presented every year. The study is 25 to 64-year-olds. We call them opinion elites, rather opinion formers. What that really means is that people who express in advance an interest in the media, an interest in politics. They tend to be college educated and in the higher percentile of employment. Over the 10 years, as I said, we've built up quite a body of knowledge, and that's really the headlines for the last 10 years. And this year the headline we say is "Trust is now an essential line of business." And what we really mean by that is, if you're Toyota, if you're BP, if you're Goldman Sachs, or indeed if you're the government of Ireland, to have a license to operate, you need to have trust. You need trust because it's a tangible or an intangible asset with tangible benefits for your business. And the only way you can really achieve trust, and we'll see this very much through the study, is through open and transparent dialogue and engagement across the spectrum of all of your stakeholders. Just looking at the images there that remind us of the year that has just gone, some of the images. And really, I suppose, if you think about that year, what we see about, or would say about it, is it's really been a perfect storm of trust for Ireland. Trust in government and what politics delivers is at an all-time low. We lack belief, not just in a political system, but in a government. And that is actually a change, that it is a lack of trust in the political system and the government overall. And if you interpret this data, it's quite clear that it's fairly obvious that we are looking for and demanding change from our politicians and from our political system. I think you could say it's really no ordinary time for trust. It's a time of fear, anger and uncertainty. Trust is really, I think we would say, out of all of this, it's not an optional extra. It's something that is essential to business, to politics, to the world of NGOs, and I know there are many NGOs represented in the room. So it is something that is under profound pressure. It is something, I think, we're at what we would say is probably an inflection point, seeing, well, where are we going as a people, where are we going as a nation and as an economy. And I think what's very interesting about the study as well is that it allows us benchmark what is going on in Ireland against other countries, so we can see the trends quite clearly internationally. So going through the data itself, as I said, there's going to be a lot of these charts, so apologies about that, but I think it's really the interpretation that we get out of it is probably the most important part. So starting off globally, you can see the 4 institutions we measure there. They are NGOs, business, government and media. Overall, what can we say about that? Surprisingly, internationally, trust is trending upwards. that is the 23 countries we've looked at are more positive overall about the institutions. There is quite a clear trend as well, and I call it the Orient Express, and that is the move of trust eastwards. We'll see as we go through that emerging economies and Eastern economies have far higher levels of trust than traditional Western democracies, and that is a challenge for trust overall. If we look at Ireland, then we'll see that we have some problems and challenges. You can see the same institutions there, and really what we've done here is benchmark trust against the global trend and the EU trend, and there's Ireland. So you can see quite clearly what we're saying overall about what is going on in our country. So you can see NGOs very much trending upwards. NGOs consistently are the most trusted institution internationally and in Ireland. Business, we'll see when we look at it, has increased, but at 46%, it's below 50, so we would still put that in a distrusted category. Government, you can see quite clearly, is under pressure, and media has made some gains. I'm sure Ger will have some views on that when he talks to us. So if you put that all into an index, which is what we've done here, what we do here is we aggregate all of the findings for every country. So we put the 4 institutions together and we aggregate them and say, okay, well, where does trust lie in all of those countries? And you can see quite clearly, if we compile the 4 institutions, that Ireland is at the bottom of that index. So that really means, we're probably not very surprised by this, that we are the least trusting of our core institutions of any of the 23 countries. Lower than Russia, which is interesting. And the other thing I think that is quite interesting there, if you look at the right-hand box, is how the US is performing. The US is undergoing quite a crisis of trust, having gone from a credit crisis. They're really now in a trust crisis, and there has been a real backlash from the Obama bans, and I'm sure Jerry will talk to us about that as well. So now turning to government and how government is faring overall, I think it's important to say that this is about the government and the governmental system. So local government, the civil service and our elected government is within these findings. You can see Ireland there on the extreme right, and you can see it's down at 20%, a drop from 28%. Really, we're seeing the impact of political failure here, and I think we're also seeing the impact of how personal that failure is for us all in terms of the loss of jobs and the changes in those who are in the employed sector in terms of their take-home pay as of this year. There's a real challenge for government here. There's a challenge for government to restore trust. We're in desperate need for change, and we're saying that quite clearly. One of the things that we've seen quite clearly out of this is that government needs a strong economy. It needs strong business to perform well, but equally business needs a stable government to perform well. And it's quite a theme coming out throughout the survey for the year, is the interrelationship between government and business. Having said that, while we're distrusting of government, we also say that government has a job to do. So about 8 out of 10 of us believe government must step in to ensure business behaves more responsibly. We're there, you can see in the red, 82%, exactly the same as the United Kingdom. So what we're saying is we do not want government to allow the failures of the past in our economy to be repeated. We're not necessarily hugely trusting of government, but we are saying to government, you have a job to do, get on with that job, regulate our economy and provide us with a system that actually works. Moving on and looking at business, as I said earlier on, there is some good news about business, and there has been an increased level of trust in business overall. You can see Ireland there again, up 15%, 31 to 46. We would still say that that places business in a distrusted category, but to a certain extent there seems to be an economic filter here that we're able to screen out the, if you want to say, that the failed captains of industry. We can eliminate that and sort of look at, well, where is the potential for restoration going to come in our economy? And we're saying, well, business quite clearly has a job to do, and that we are quite hopeful that business will be the institution that will drive change. And if you think about that and the incoming government, that government isn't going to be able to deliver us much good economic news. So we're dependent on that government to give us political reform, but business, and if we look at the performance of the underlying economy, is performing reasonably robustly, and I know Barry will talk to us about that quite shortly. We are just looking at that, still in the distrusters category for business, and re-emphasising the point I made earlier on. You can see that it's associated very much with some Western economies, particularly Ireland and the UK over on the left. The Netherlands, Italy performing quite well. The Netherlands has a far more planned and interventionist system of government, and the relationship with business is far more structured, so that might be a reason for that finding. I know there are a number of people from banks in the room, and I think there's no surprises about this slide really. The domestic banks, we have absolutely no confidence in them. You can see on the extreme right, they're down from 26% to 6%. In the 10 to 11 years we've been doing this study, that is the first time we have found a single-digit finding for any organisation, any institution. It is the lowest finding we have ever had for any institution. There's not much to say about it. I think we all have our views as to the whys. I think what we do about it. What is interesting is if you look over to the left, really emphasising that point about trust moving to the east. You can see China, India, emerging economies, Brazil, all with high levels of trust in their banking system. So what we are seeing is very much associated with certain Western economies, the US, the UK and Ireland being cases in point, but it is not a global phenomenon, and too often we're conditioned by the media here that we think, yes, there is a global recession, we understand that, but it isn't impacting quite as harshly around the world as it is impacting here. Ireland is less trusting than its global peers of most sectors. What we actually do here is take a look and say, okay, what sectors do we trust? And I think there's two interesting trends here. Technology remains the most globally trusted sector internationally. It is continuously so. It is a sector that is high